Because we are about to begin our high-level political dialogue, where I'm pleased to welcome, of course, the Commissioner for Energy, Kadri Simson, Mrs. Anni Sinnemäki, Deputy Mayor of Helsinki, Mr. Markku Markkula, the Vice Chairman of the European Committee of Regions, and the Mayor of Tallinn, Mr. Mihhail Kõlvart. Ladies and gentlemen, with your applause, they certainly feel even better to come on the stage. Now, dear friends, you will also have the opportunity to shape our discussion by posting your questions either to Slido. There is a QR code here, which you can scan with your phone, or simply head to slido.com and enter the event code ERP. Now, the questions from there will travel to my iPad, where I will see them, and will try to make most of the time we have here to ask as many as I can, but there is also an old-school analog way to ask questions, although we, of course, in Tallinn prefer to do things digitally. People-to-people interaction is still okay, so you can simply raise your hand if I open the floor to the questions, and we have two microphones here that you can then use to ask the panel. Before we reach that phase of the discussion, I will take about half an hour to go through the questions that I have prepared, and then you will have the chance to ask yours. Now, welcome to the panel. Really a pleasure to have you all here.
Thank you.
Perhaps we can start with Mrs. Anni Sinnemäki. How could solar, if you could elaborate a bit on this idea of solar energy in our Nordic region? What is the share of solar in Helsinki?
Thank you. And first of all, thank you for Tallinn for the invitation, and once more, congrats for being the European Green Capital. We are very happy about that in Helsinki. If I take a slightly broader view, I could say that, well, in Helsinki, our climate goal, our commitment is to be carbon neutral by 2030. That is, we will reduce the emissions by 80% from the 1990 level. And buildings, heating, energy efficiency, how buildings are being built, they of course form a really important part of our climate action. Regarding solar, I think that our percentage is not so high in Helsinki, but it's promising because in the end, perhaps a bit opposite what was thought at some point, actually Nordic long nights provide a quite good place for the solar. And as Commissioner Simson mentioned, the rooftop solar has been something that has been taken further everywhere in Europe and also in Helsinki. And at the moment, we are also moving to the phase where the energy company that the city owns, Helen, they are investing in separate solar fields or solar parks elsewhere in Finland. So in the future, it will not only be like that we have a sports hall or hospital or, say, city-owned rental housing unit that has solar on the rooftop, but actually that the solar energy that the Helsinki Energy Company produces will come from somewhere else in Finland where the space is larger, and then the solar energy will come to the grid. So we will then not separate in a way the solar energy produced in the city area and elsewhere in Finland. And all in all, the solar capacity in Finland is increasing really rapidly, as is the wind. And it is exactly because actually the solar energy is quite a good option also in the Nordic circumstances.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Kõlvart, well, there has certainly been a boom of solar energy in Estonia in the past years. Now, how has Tallinn contributed to it? I know Tallinn has a lot of new projects ongoing, but perhaps you could elaborate a bit. What potential do you see in solar? And is Tallinn also planning to have solar fields outside the premises of the city?
It's true that from the last year, Tallinners start to be very active. I'm talking about private houses. So I think one day we have to answer to the question, is it possible to use all this energy in the future? Do we have enough capacity for this energy? But today, so this is one of our priority, to use solar energy also in the municipal level. So, and we use now two programs. First, roofs of our municipal buildings. So every municipal building now analyzed for the possibility to use solars, and the next step, we want to motivate our citizens, and we have also special supporting program. We are ready to give to our citizens financial support to use solars on the roofs, but in the same time, in the future, we have to be ready to use all this energy. This is also a very important question.
Mr. Markkula, where do you see the challenge with solar in cities in the Nordics? I mean, the common perception is, of course, in this region, we barely have any sunlight. As we heard from the two representatives, we have plenty of it, but we might be struggling with grid connections. So perhaps we have even too much solar capacity available or installed. So where do you see the challenges of the region in this energy transition?
Okay, thank you first for inviting me here, and especially I want to congratulate Tallinn for this green capital, and one special reason as well, because I was in the jury to make the decision. We had the jury meeting in Lahti, and I always remember Mihhail and your delegation coming them to showcase what you plan to do, why this award is so crucial. And so your plans were, let's say, so positive that after severe thinking, so because there were two other very strong candidates as well. So, and I'm very happy and pleased that you have done so much using the award of Green Capital. So, but coming from that, so I think that the key in answering your question is as well, so that we need to see the whole energy system. It's part of the system of responsibility of the cities, mainly cities and the region. But as Anni told, so it's a national policy as well, or it's the EU policy. So we cannot take separately only the solar from the rest of this transformation. And that means really, as Mihhail said in the opening, stressing the empowering cities. So we need to have the good understanding what is already available, what are the future prospects, how the new developments go on. And I have as well studied, part of my engineering degree was energy production system. And when I did that in the 70s, early 80s, so we never thought, or we thought clearly that we cannot have solar power in Finland because we don't have enough sun. And then we said as well, we cannot ever have geothermal power in the energy system because we don't have geysers. We had both Hungary and Iceland as good examples, and we were kind of lacking those. But what has happened? So it showed on just the opposite. So we can do in both solar, geothermal, but there are most likely there are many others that we don't really yet see the crucial role. And that's why the systematic approach is so crucial. definitely solar is part of that, but especially in different parts of Europe, we need to take all both the cultural, social, environment aspects, which differ so much. It's totally different in Southern Europe compared to the Northern. So what are the main sources, how to combine, what kind of capital we have, where the national private investments or foreign investments, direct investments are ready to do that. So and we need to open to have this, let's say, flexibility in the system.
Thank you very much. You already touched upon many issues that I would like to focus on in the later bits of our conversation, but I would stick to solar and give the word to Kadri Simson. Now, if you look at how Europe has shifted in the energy transition from fossils to renewable energy, and you look at the ongoing solar panel kind of boom, then how does the region, Finland, Estonia, the Nordics, stand out in this? I mean, are we installing more solar capacity than perhaps regions where there's even more sun, or are we actually lagging behind? Where do you see the progress of the region?
I do believe that here in Baltic and Nordic region, the renewable development is quite impressive. And mainly it is due to two factors. The biggest bottleneck for new solar installations is very time-consuming and lengthy permitting process. And if permitting process is not keeping project promoters waiting for too long, then we see that the share of renewables in energy mix is more impressive, and so it is, both in Estonia and in Finland. The other aspect is that consumers, they have to understand that there are benefits for them. And as you know, in some member states, we still have regulated electricity prices, so actually you don't realize that there are peak hours where electricity is more expensive than in hours when either consumption is very low or well production is abundant. In our region, lots of households have opted for flexible pricing, and that's why they do understand the benefits of covering some of your consumption by yourself. And the third aspect, I think, was behind this boom that we witnessed last year. It was actually 2 years ago when we saw that Russia started to manipulate with our gas market. They cut unilaterally the agreed gas volumes so that one country after another faced difficulties. And our suggestion to our consumers, both industry, governments, but also households, was that save if you can. If you cannot, opt for fuel switch. And of course, we prioritize renewables. So if you can replace natural gas with renewables, please do so. And in power generation, the alternative is there. Instead of gas-fired power plants, for several hours, wind and solar can provide you alternatives. And last year was the first year ever in Europe when wind and solar produced more energy than gas. This was driven by the price component, but I think that partially it was also our mindset that we want to survive. We don't want Russia to be successful manipulating our energy markets.
Mr. Markkula.
Yeah, I would like to add one thing, because actually as a result of the research, development, innovation, so the solar panel technology has improved so much, and for sure it will still improve. So we need to invest as well on the research, and that's partly the private sector, but partly the public sector, to do that together. And let me say an example, because as a city, Espoo, we did some 10 years ago, we invested only little money for some master level or doctorate level thesis works. some talented, they calculated, took the master plan of the city, all the houses, and made it a kind of predictable. So if you invest as a private investor in solar panels, so how many years it will take to return of that investment. And it improved immediately because private house owners, residence buildings, small one-family houses, they were able to calculate this. What does it mean, how much they need to pay? And it was already in some cases at that time, 10 years ago, profitable. And now it's even more.
Mr. Sinnemäki, I'm interested, what other renewable energy alternatives is actually Helsinki considering? I mean, can we talk about the Baltic Sea thermal energy, for instance? Because I know we will hear later today about the opportunities that Tallinn district heating developers are focusing on. How does Helsinki see the other renewable solutions? Because there's probably also like waste heat utilization, etc. So maybe you can elaborate a bit on the other options we have next to solar.
Yes, I think you could divide this in two. Helsinki, the majority of households, they belong to the district heating network. And the district heating actually has been like the Achilles heel of our climate action, since the district heating has so far been so dependent or so much using so much coal. This year, of course, has been super important in Helsinki since we closed down the second coal power plant. We still have one going, but it will be closed by spring 25. So there are processes that are actually increasing renewables in the district heating grid and in the district heating system. And there, the wastewater heat is the most important element so far. We have huge pumps that actually do take the heat out of all the wastewater that Helsinki people are producing, and they are removing that heat to the district heating system. And that is, at the moment, next winter, it will be probably like 12% of the total amount of district heating. Then when it comes to individual housing companies or households, one stream that we have been really focusing in is the geothermal. And just now we have gone above the line of geothermal producing a bit more than 3% of all the heat needed in city. And although 3%, it's not such a big number, but I would describe it as significant in the sense that it has only been like 5 years that we have been sort of in a modern way investing in geothermal in apartment houses. So the change actually has been really rapid, and our goal is to have 15% of all the heat needed in the city to be produced by geothermal by 2030. And that is an investment that private housing companies are doing. And our role as a city has been to clarify the regulations, make it easier to actually have the permits, show the rules so that everyone can work in the same way. And also we have a team of engineers in our building inspection who sort of guide housing companies when they ask that what are their alternatives. But then the whole market has been private. There has been some subsidies in the national level that has helped housing companies, but I think it has mainly been just the calculation that actually it's cheaper for the housing companies to invest in geothermal and get rid of the district heating, because in the district heating price we have seen the needed result of the European emission trading system, that the district heating that has had coal as an element has been expensive. So I do believe that geothermal will play for a long time a really significant role in the energy, especially in the heating system. And of course, the energy company that is responsible for the district heating grid, they are also exploring sort of larger scale geothermal projects, because so far it has been mainly like individual housing companies, even big ones, but still that they provide energy for themselves. So the question of sort of larger geothermal will come into picture as well. Regarding the heat from the sea, we have explored that, but so far we have not found in a large scale the sort of good sort of investment return so far. But you never know, because these things, they develop quite fast.
So geothermal has more potential than the Baltic Sea heat in the experience of Helsinki.
In Helsinki so far. And one reason, of course, it comes from the geology of this city, that we have quite much bedrock. So also that has sort of contributed, that the circumstances have been suitable for geothermal.
Very intriguing. Mr. Kõlvart, I know Tallinn has a lot of ideas on using also the Baltic Sea water as a source, I guess, both for heating and perhaps also cooling. But how have you looked at the potential of geothermal, for instance? Is that a thing that Tallinn has a strategic aim with?
First of all, two examples how energy crisis accelerate changes. In Tallinn, about 70% of territory is covered by central heating. Not 70, about maybe 66, 67. And central heating is obligatory for those places where it is. So you don't have choice to use your house heating, your local system, or to choose central heating. You have to choose central heating. And for many years we had discussions with house owners and also with some citizens who live in apartments who didn't want to use central heating because gas was always cheaper. And after the crisis started, we don't have this discussion, and we have to accelerate those changes, and the people now are very motivated. One more story about gas. So in our public transportation, we had a two-step plan. First of all, gas buses, and then electric buses. But we bought 350 buses, gas buses, and the next year we had gas crisis. So
Good timing.
Yes, good timing, yes. But today, about 40% of our need is covered by biogas. And from the next year, we are ready to cover 100% of our needs by biogas. So nothing to do, but we have to be fast. But if we talk about alternative energy sources, so now our ambition is to replace about 20% of our needs in central heating by renewable energy, wastewater energy and seawater energy. So it means that after 3 years, this is our plan, it will be possible not to use actually natural gas in central heating. And this is, of course, possible only because we have a good cooperation with private sector. So 2 years of negotiation, and this year we created a common company with utilities company. And the biggest aim of this company, the most important project of this company during the next 3 years, to create possibility to use 2 sources of renewable energy, once more, wastewater and seawater.
And 20% altogether will be kind of the margin what this wastewater and sea energy will use in the central heating system.
In central, yes, 20% of central heating system. And of course, this is not only about central heating. It's in the future, also it's about central cooling.
Mm-hmm. What about the 80%? What will this use?
We have biomass. It's also, as we know, renewable energy.
Mm-hmm.
And in the future, so I think our dream is to increase the influence of renewable energy. This is, I think, have to be the bigger plan. That the biggest part of our energy will receive from seawater and wastewater. And once more, as we know, to use sea water energy, we need to use also electricity. And so what is also very positive, if we talk about our partner plans, to use solar panels to create this energy. So if we talk, when we talk about the energy, we have to talk also about the synergy.
Mrs. Sinnemäki, you wanted a quick comment, and then I'm going to hand the floor to Kadri.
Yeah, just one comment that we shouldn't forget regarding the heating needs, that one really important aspect, of course, is the energy efficiency of the buildings. So how to affect the total amount of heat needed, because it's easier to fill up the different percentages by renewables for the heating needs if you actually need less heat. And that is, of course, something that Commission is working really hard at the moment. And in Helsinki, that it has been one of our sort of focus areas to increase the energy efficiency of our own building stock, be it rental housing, apartment buildings, or be it schools or sports facilities. And also we have provided guidance and guidance also to the subsidies for private housing companies in order for them to increase their energy efficiency. And there's actually really a lot to do in Helsinki in this field, and our goal is to reduce the total amount of heat needed from the early 2000 years to 2030 by 20%. So 1/5 less heat should be needed by 2030.
We will discuss the renovation wave also a bit later, but Kadri, Simson, when I listen to this potential of geothermal, but also wastewater, then it seems as if it's not so much highlighted in our discussion towards the energy transition, because we mostly talk about solar and wind power, which should give the majority of energy. But as cities are big consumers of energy, what is the potential that the European Commission sees in these technologies that generate power from waste energy, geothermal energy, but perhaps also the sea?
Actually, despite the boom that we witnessed last year on solar, still the biggest renewable energy provider is hydropower. And in this region, especially during spring months, we all benefit from impressive hydro generation capacity from Nordic countries. The second biggest is biomass. And in this regard, in cities, we strongly support highly efficient cogeneration. So not only producing electricity, but also providing heat. And this is what is happening here. And we are also considering the waste in generation as a renewable power, because there is some waste that we cannot reuse, where circular economy is not the option, and in this regard, it is a very valuable energy source. I wanted to mention that there are some obstacles that we face when we promote renewables. The first obstacle is that our cities were built mainly in previous centuries, and the electricity grid was not designed to face these challenges that we do have right now. So to charge your electric vehicles, to opt for heat pumps when in many cities we do have individual gas boilers, for example. And that means that we have to invest a lot to upgrade our grids. The other obstacle is that our building stock is very different. So we do have cities where we have large districts built in the same decade, like 80s or 70s, where district renovation is an option. We do have cities where all the buildings are heritage buildings and their roofs will not be fit for the Chinese-produced heavy solar panels. And this is the reason why here in Europe right now we are investing a lot into the domestic production of new generation solar panels, which are lightweight and 100% recyclable, because very soon we will face the situation that Chinese products will end their life cycle and you really cannot recycle it. So we will face the challenge of solar panels waste. And then how will we fight with the situation that we will replace imported fossil fuels with imported solar panels, for example? We will support our industry here in Europe, and not only for solar panels or windmills, but in our Net Zero Industry Act, we named 9 most promising energy-related industrial sectors. There is geothermal, there is also biomethane, biogas, because we will need some gas also in the decades to come, and cities know very well that they can also produce some biogas themselves. It doesn't have to come from agricultural residues, but what a wonderful source we do have in our sewage system. So big cities, not only warm water from our bath tubes, but also a lot of other stuff that can provide very valuable gas. And then, of course, on top of that, we will also support small modular reactors. This is not technology existing yet, but might provide us a alternative for coal or gas, and doesn't demand so much land. So European Commission has announced this strategy this spring, and we already do have hundreds of European companies who are applying for support.
12% of energy from wastewater is what Helsinki has in mind. How does that sound as the European average? I mean, as you mentioned, we all like to take a hot shower or a bath probably more often than not. So what is the potential of actually warm water being used that now goes to the sewage? Is it 12% in Europe averagely, or is it even more?
It is very difficult to name European average because, as I mentioned,
not all like warm water.
Yeah, actually, building sector is national competence.
Yeah.
It is decided so because the difference is so big. Well, the heating need in Finland and Estonia is so different than it is in Portugal or Greece. Mm-hmm. The heritage buildings in our building stock are also different, and that means that I actually have traveled a lot and seen wonderful examples, locally created, but you can't replicate them. And that's why it's so important to share best practice.
Mr. Markkula.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. So one example again, so that when at the Committee of the Regions we discussed with the new directive for wastewater treatment for the whole Europe. So and when we actually, I took the floor on describing some of our challenges in Finland. I was followed by the friend member from Sweden. And we told to the Commission representative, the experts, so that in some cases we need to first to warm up the wastewater to get that taken care in the treatment plant. So he was so impressed, and so he did not believe in the beginning. Why do you heat up? You use the energy for heating wastewater. Yes, we said that, of course, we have so severe winter, so that in some parts of our Nordic countries we need to do this first. But then the process takes care of and takes the heat again out of this energy. So this is really that the differences in different parts of Europe are so huge. So we need to develop, but all what we stress heavily from the Committee of the Region perspective is that everywhere we need to have the systemic approach, very kind of systems thinking on this, and look all the elements, and it differs what can be the solutions. But it's a combination. It's a mixture of, and if we now look the reasons why Germany, as an example, has so many difficulties in their system, it's partly that they don't have this district heating system, which especially in Finland was built already after the Second World War, step by step. So in Espoo, as an example, so it's actually 50 years ago that first part of the district heating system was built already, or actually 60 years when Tapiola started. It was just a few hundred meters, and now practically the whole Espoo city, because we are practically Helsinki, Espoo, Vantaa, we are one city in these systems. So all our heating systems are integrated, electricity is integrated, public transportation, wastewater treatment is integrated, and that helps a lot in having these different solutions. And I would still stress one thing, that when we talk about empowering city on these issues, it's not the city as an official part as civil servants and so on. It's the whole community. It's private sector, and in Helsinki and Espoo we have a bit different. We don't have the Espoo-owned energy company. We have actually Fortum as our energy company, but then it means as well that Fortum is using Espoo as its kind of reference site and test bed for the new solutions. And we have made with them and other companies a clear plan what happens within the next 10 years. So we will be carbon neutral Espoo as a city by 2030 as well. So and in many of these elements we will collaborate much, and we take every aspect, every sector, geothermal, wastewater, as part of the energy system as well.
Ms. Sinnemäki.
Yeah, just perhaps for Tallinn especially, that circumstances are different, and in wastewater treatment, if you want to take phosphorus out or nitrogen out, it needs certain temperature. But I think that Helsinki wastewater treatment plant and the energy company that has already 15 years at least experience for taking the heat out of the sewage water heat. And of course, there's need for electricity in that system as well, because you need the heat pumps that use electricity. But if Tallinn is planning to that direction, I think it's really would be useful to talk to Helen and to our wastewater treatment company, that in a way, where are the difficult parts of that and how does it work year round? So I would recommend to use their experiences to help you to do the best possible investment and system.
Cooperation developing here on the stage already. That is excellent. I think we have to talk about gas, because obviously this was one of the great challenges that Europe faced in our last winter. As Kadri Simson said, we averagely saved 18% of gas, so this is the gas that we didn't use. Mr. Kõlvart, I wonder, has Tallinn ever calculated what would it mean if we completely got rid of gas? Of course, the beautiful gas buses that you had just bought would then have to use biogas, which I guess they are already using. But in heating, what would it actually mean? What kind of investments? Or would it even be thinkable to completely get rid of gas? I have a gas boiler at my home. Can't wait to be connected to the district heating system. So I wonder, have you made those plans?
So, as I said, actually, we have plan. So if we talk about the public transportation, so from the next year, our aim to use 100% biogas.
Mm-hmm.
So if we talk about the central heating or district heating, so we have two projects. We started with those projects with our partner, our leading partner. It means that we can replace in central heating also gas. If in the future we can use wastewater and seawater energy.
What about apartments like my own? You have a lot of them in Tallinn who are connected to the gas grid. Every either apartment or an apartment house has a gas boiler. How big of a footprint does that have in Tallinn? And is it even feasible to think that we would substitute it to, I don't know, electric heat pumps or anything else?
Where do you live?
In Kalamaja.
Okay.
In Põhja-Tallinn.
Yes, so this area is well known because there are different local heating systems. And now one of the projects, one of the aim to replace all local heating system and to provide the central heating. And actually in the future we have to cover not 67, 66, but 80%. Mm-hmm. So actually all citizens who want and who are ready, they have to use central heating. This is a priority. And if most of our citizens use central heating, so it means they don't have to use gas. And actually, I believe that you are not happy to have gas. But today, the price is not so high, as I know. What I don't know. If Madam Commissioner can say what to expect in the winter, next winter, so what will be a situation. But anyway, so we know that we have a very concrete aim. We don't want to use natural gas from Russia. So it means that in the local level, if I talk about the local level, I mean municipal level, so we have to use those technology what we can use in Tallinn. Yes, we know that maybe it's not possible to use those technologies in all European cities, of course. But if we have this possibility in Tallinn, we have to do it.
What is the strategy of Helsinki in changing those gas boilers to other more sustainable non-Russian assets?
Yes, in Helsinki last winter and the time before it was a shock and also a price shock for the heating system. I don't think we have actually, I'm thinking if we have any individual gas boilers, might be in some, but really few. Our problem was that we used gas in the district heating, and actually the energy company's strategy had been prior to when before the war Russia started using gas prices already a way to pressure Europe, that it had been a plan to use gas for a longer period while phasing out coal. And of course, that all went completely differently. And at the moment, our district heating system is not using any Russian gas anymore. Actually, they just stopped the delivery that had been continuing for decades and decades and through different wars and different periods. And of course, it was important for us that it ended, as a distinguished commissioner said, that it's really important to stop providing revenue for Russia to wage the war. Our last winter was quite horrible regarding climate emissions, since in this rapid timetable, the energy company replaced gas by increasing the amount of coal, and also in the coldest days burning crude oil. So last year's emissions do not look good in Helsinki. I think in Helsinki, like actually in whole of Europe, the fact that we had been investing and preparing for the climate action was the thing that saved us or helped us to react so fast to the Russian war. So we had a biomass heat generation plant already on the way, and it actually was completed in December last year. So that helped already a bit, and there were other investments like further heat pumps to take even more out of wastewater, and all these, of course, helped a lot. At the moment in Helsinki, one way to replace both gas and coal is actually to electrify the heating system, even with simple sort of just like electric boilers, basically. And why we are doing that, it would be something that I think Mr. Markkula, they would have screamed at their team of students back in the 80s if they had proposed using electricity for heating. But at the moment, the capacity of electricity in the Finnish energy system is increasing so rapidly with wind, with the fifth nuclear power plant being completed after some 20 years, and solar energy increasing. So actually it seems that there are different systems when we just use pure electricity to heat the water for the district heating system. And that will be one of the ways how to get rid of both gas and oil. But I would have to say that the plans of our energy company, they are not ready yet, so there are still investment to be studied regarding both 2030 and 2035 to get completely rid or sort of 99% rid of fossil fuels.
I've been observing Mr. Markkula, and he's not screaming at all. Is electricity, electric boilers, electric heat pumps, the future of Europe in areas where you don't have district heating networks well built as you have in Finland and also in Tallinn?
Yeah, it will be that it's very crucial, this electric, let's say, improvements and the whole grid system, because as Kadri said, so from the EU perspective, so energy policy is more in the hands of national solutions, but we need to collaborate really much more so to get this done. One element that the EU can help, or actually it's again in the hands of the national and regional authorities, is the use of the cohesion funds, European Regional Development Funds and others, because there we can accelerate this transformation heavily, and that helps. But as Anni told about the situation in Finland, so I would like to add to that, so that when we already, after the Second World War, we invested on this electric grid throughout the whole country. It was first especially to build power stations, water power stations in the rivers in the north, and bring then the electricity to the south. And now we can take the full advantage of this, but we still need to invest a lot to add to this electricity grid, because we want to have that on a safe basis. And that is needs, especially when we move to use the wind energy, especially in the western part of Finland. So both on the countryside, but on the Baltic Sea as well, we'll build the wind power, which is huge investments, partly again foreign investments, and that makes a lot of sense to the system in Finland. And partly these kind of experiences can be used in other parts. But I will add one example where I personally was involved with the Fortum and the Irish energy system transformation. The ambassador of Finland in Dublin phoned me 2 years ago that, well, Markku, now we need your help as well to convince the Irish policy makers about these transformation needs. And she organized, the ambassador organized a couple of these kind of webinars that I was part with the Fortum experts and research experts from the university. So to explain how we have done and how that would apply to the Irish situation. And now the first big investments in building the, let's say, local district heating development has been done. But it's not only that the traditional burning coal or oil, but it's really the renewables which are the sources for this district heating as well. So it's a combination always on many things, and it needs to be applied in all local cultural and social technological situations.
Mrs. Simpson, as someone whose home is powered by gas, I of course can't resist my temptation to ask, what will the gas price be this winter? How have the markets reacted to the fact that storage, as you said, is almost full? I know you've been touring around the world to make those LNG deals. What is the market showing? What can we expect from this winter?
Indeed, our underground gas storage is full, and that means that Russia doesn't have any possibility to manipulate with our price as they did in previous year. But there are different aspects that will impact retail consumers. Because as I was mentioning, natural gas is not consumed only for heating, but it is also needed by industry. And it doesn't happen already this winter, but next years you will witness decision made by industrialists that they will replace natural gas with hydrogen. And that means that if big consumers like factories will not cover part of the transmission line fees, then households will either face heavy increase of transmission fees, or they will even lose the opportunity because, well, the demand is not there. And we do have one member state, this is Netherlands, who is still producing natural gas right at this very moment. But they have made national decision that they will stop natural gas consumption overall. And their transmission line operator is already retrofitting their lines to be ready to start delivering instead of natural gas, the hydrogen. So this is development that is taking place, and as we have witnessed with solar panels, at first, a couple of decades ago, it needed heavy investment from German taxpayers, but then prices came down and it is now affordable to everybody. And I think that in these years to come, we will see also this decarbonization of the gas sector to happen very rapidly.
A quick comment, go ahead.
Yeah, just a brief comment, because the hydrogen, that is so crucial, especially for the climate change, tackling those. So because now it's not only to produce the energy for the households and so on, but it's especially for renewing the industrial processes. And that is the reason that especially in Sweden, mainly northern central Sweden, they are investing heavily. And the same in Finland, because we have there the steel industry, and that is changing. All those process industries, pulp and paper included. So that makes a lot of sense. So, and that's hydrogen kind of booming what is going on in Europe. And that's something that we need to be more active, Finland, Sweden, and Estonia as well, because some parts of the Central and Southern Europe, so they started heavily, so took this hydrogen development as one of their political priorities together with industry. We have started a bit slower, but now we are moving very, very fast.
Thank you very much. Dear audience, thank you so much for your patience. I see you have been posting an endless amount of questions to Slido. I truly appreciate it. And time has moved extremely fast here. We still have about half an hour of discussion ahead of us. So I'm going to take some of the questions that you have posted. Well, first of all, the first question that has been posted will now be asked. This is a question to the representatives of Tallinn and Helsinki. How are you involving and engaging residents to come on board the energy transition? Mr. Kõlvart.
So we have to provide possibilities to our people. So if we want that our people will use solar energy, so it means that we have to support it. And in Tallinn we have this support system, but in the future our people they have to know that this is a long-term project, that solar energy in the future will be also more effective and cheaper. So, of course, our people have to feel that their opinion is also very important for us. So that's why we call the people to discuss all problem what we have if we talk about climate changes and about our plans for the future. We have different support systems or support measures for Tallinners, and one of them is also supporting of facade renovation. Mm-hmm. And this is actually for Tallinn one of the biggest problems. So my colleague said that energy efficiency is not only about energy sources, it's also about houses, the quality of houses. And nothing to do. In Tallinn, we have, I think, about 70,000 apartment houses, and most of them, about 58,000, built before 2000. So they are 25 years old, and 50,000 of apartment houses in Tallinn actually have to be renovated.
That is a great challenge, and I hope we have time to discuss the renovation wave in about 15 minutes. But what are the examples that Helsinki uses to engage citizens?
Well, many examples, but if I focus to the building sector, it's perhaps a bit different, because in the building sector, when we're talking about how your apartment house is heated, it's not something you choose every day as a consumer, like perhaps you can choose a bike instead of a car. So our aim has been to empower and attract people to act in their respective housing companies. And also that our aim has been to provide as much guidance and help, since of course an ordinary citizen, when she or he starts to think that how our apartment house should be heated, you don't know it immediately. You need experts, and that's why we we have formed this sort of a group of expert engineers. They are called Energy Renaissance, and they work in the building inspection service in the city, and they serve all the household company board members or just individual flat owners when they want to start to find out what to do. So they provide guidance that what should they do, should they increase insulation or renovate the windows or actually go full to the geothermal. And this kind of help. We also ran a advertising campaign saying that, do you want to do your biggest climate action this year? Go to your housing company's general meeting and demand for a energy inspection for your house. But in the end, I have to say that the price has been the biggest contributor, that all this action that we wanted to boost by campaigns and by giving help, actually it was more boosted when the prices started going up. So in the end, that was the price and money was the biggest consultant and empowerer of people in this sector.
Mr. Markula, I actually have a question from the audience to you as well. As EU member states submit their draft national energy and climate plans, how can we ensure cities have their seat around the table and receive adequate support for the transition?
The key on that is definitely that the cities are the actors who can make this change transformation. And that's why it's so important. I know I've analyzed Finnish national plan, which was done several years ago, and I've never heard about that inside Finland, not even from the news or so on. But when I was then part of the EU decision making, I wanted to look at Finland and a couple of the others. So there were many elements that definitely we could have been, let's say, supporting from the city side. And one thing now linked to that is the big change which is happening is that citizens, households, we are not anymore only buying this energy, but we are supplying that to certain cases. When Kadri Simson mentioned in her opening statement the peak hours, so everyone now knows about the price of electricity, how it is changing, and especially on the cold winter days, so the price was so huge. So that we need to be able to cut our own consumption, but again, it differs in along the day. So in the morning, it's very high when everything processes start and so on. So we need it to change so that we don't use that much energy and electricity in the morning or in what used to be, especially in Finland, that everyone wanted to have on Saturday, late afternoon, early evening to go to the sauna. So the electricity use went up. But now when we can cut that, and the change is what is happening when we discussed about solar and geothermal. So when these households are linked to the general system, so we can sell from that the produced energy as well. Or now what is coming with the electric cars. So the battery system is going to be so you charge to get the power during night hours when the electricity price is very low or even negative, and you can sell from your car's battery that when during these peak hours. So it is really going to change, and that's where we need a lot of the new engineering and business development, so about the system. And that is something that we need to apply to every national situation. And there we come to this national energy plans, and we need to integrate. Energy is one part of the climate solution system, and electricity is part of the energy systems. So we cannot optimize every one of those separately. We cannot operate in silos. We need to integrate.
Mm-hmm. And a question to the commissioner from the audience. How has the revision of the EU directives, or how will it reinforce the role of cities and regions and support them implementing the green energy transition and achieving EU climate and energy targets? A rather technical question.
It is a rather technical question. Well, basically, during the past year, energy ministers, they have met, in 2022, we met 12 times. We opened all the energy-related files. So everything has been opened, renegotiated, and this is also one of the reasons why now national governments are upgrading their national energy and climate plans. So this was roadmap to achieve previous 2030 targets, but last year was a living test that our ambitions were too low, and we have to achieve higher targets. So in renewables, the new target will be 42.5% of renewables in overall energy mix. That doesn't mean that 42.5 in power generation will be sufficient. No, on the contrary. There are sectors that are lagging behind, namely industry and transport, and clearly in transport, well, the public transport of cities is the low-hanging fruit that can make difference right now. Saying that, of course, also in private transportation, we are seeing the change. Last year, every fourth new passenger car that was sold in Europe was electric vehicle. That means that mainly these vehicles are charged in private places, but cities' infrastructure is also the key. So we cannot achieve our targets without very strongly involving local municipalities, because unless cities and towns will change their infrastructure, the private citizens will not change their patterns. And saying that, I also wanted to mention that there will be not only new regulations, because very often I hear that if something relatively negative is happening, it is very easy to find the excuse that this is EU regulation. On top of that, there will be a lot of financing available, because we are in the middle of the multi-annual financial period for 2020 until 2027. But the very first year of Ursula von der Leyen's commission took place during the COVID outbreak. And then all the experts told us that this kind of extraordinary lockdown will trigger a total recession, and you have to do something. And what we did was that on behalf of EU 27 countries, we took a loan, and we gave the national governments the additional recovery financing. But we didn't give it like this. We also requested that 40% of this additional financing has to go to the energy-related investment. And this recovery fund is a short-term fund that all the national governments have to invest in the coming years. So I know that you will have a question about renovation too, but basically if you have like hundreds of millions at your disposal and you have to use them right now, then there are some actions that you can take, and without local municipalities and cities and technical assistance, it doesn't materialize.
I would really love to get into the renovation wave now, but before we do that, because you both mentioned mobility, I'm going to take two more questions from the audience about mobility. How will Helsinki tackle decarbonization objectives in 2030 in terms of mobility? An anonymous person from the audience has asked.
Thank you. A great and a difficult question. In Helsinki, we are really quite intensively at the moment investing in light rail, in new trams. And they are not completely like trams that we have in the city center, but bit faster trams that will reach also the suburbs of the city. And that will like level up the quality of our public transport network. Our bus system is electrifying quite fast. We had a small phase with gas buses, but we are now going, I think, with the bus fleet like towards full electric, and the goal is to have it fully electric. It's a regional system, so Mr. Markku and Espoo are there with us and other municipalities as well. So we will try to get that 100% electrified by 2030. Then we are investing in cycling infra, and of course in the circumstances where it would be convenient to walk. We are investing in charging facilities, and also like forcing private housing companies to invest private money in the charging facilities. But I have to say that all this does not get us to the goal of 2030. That actually what we should do is to reduce the driven kilometers of combustion engine kilometers. And it's not so easy to do. And even if 100% of all the new cars that will be registered in Helsinki would be, and it's not the case, but if every new car would be an electric car, actually still we would have 50% of cars that are not electric 2030.
You need to get rid of cars.
So we do not have to get rid of cars, but we certainly do need to make their space smaller and diminish the driven kilometers. And that is not politically easy, and we are still trying to find the ways to do that.
Same question pretty much to Mr. Kõlvart. How do you see the transition in private transport? Because Tallinn is in a challenging moment with private cars. We see huge traffic jams. How do we achieve our climate goals by 2030?
Yes, today we have one very simple instrument to create on the street situation when you cannot use your private transport at all.
I know. We've been experiencing that throughout the summer.
Yes, but if you talk seriously, so mobility is not only about the transport, and it's not only about public transport. Actually, we have talked about the city room. We have talked about the vehicles. If we talk about the public transportation. What kind of vehicles we use, tram, trolley buses, metro buses, and how we create new city room when we have place, when we have room for pedestrians, for the public transport, and for the private vehicles. So, and you had question about municipal priorities, or about our understanding how European Commission can help cities. So, and when we discuss the same topic with my colleagues, with leaders, mayors of European cities, so we always we have the same message. First of all, we need to have holistic solutions, holistic support system. When we talk not only about one priority, public transportation, or separately city room, or separately new vehicles, we talk about the holistic project where we can receive support from European Commission. And the next topic, what we discuss always, to have more possibility to have direct finance support from European Commission, no through the state. So this is two very important topics. But if we talk about the mobility in Tallinn, so all those changes, what you see in the city room, this is in the future means that we will have new tram lane, when we will have more room for the bicycle roads and more room for the pedestrians. And creating the new city room give us possibility to create new possibilities for the mobility.
Perhaps I can just take a quick reaction from the Commissioner. The Mayor had a few suggestions how the Commission should handle mobility and support Tallinn directly. What's your take on that?
It's not about Tallinn, it's about
more
all
general
European citizens,
understanding, yeah.
not only mobility.
Well, Tallinn airport is my entry gate when I return home, and I have always been very proud that actually when you return Tallinn, you don't need a car, because I used to take the direct tram line from airport to the city center. So I truly regret that right now it's not possible, because this would be the best advertisement for Green Capital. I truly hope that very soon I can take my tram journey again. And this is a fine example how EU funds actually have helped to modernize capital's transport lines. And this is the core setup of EU treaty that our partners are national governments. But different financing tools to have a clear rules how national governments can provide these funds across the country, and there are well established networks how also regions are involved, and I do believe that this has worked well. Of course, always capitals are complaining that maybe they don't see such a large share of EU funds than regions, but this is also one of the aims that we have to help also more remote regions to catch up, because EU funds actually are, compared to the national funds, not so significant. And one of our aims is to help also regional development. So that's a mere situation that we are facing.
Mr. Sinnemäki, just a quick comment before we head to the renovation wave, because we have 15 minutes
for
left.
the Commission, I think, regarding transport policies and the climate goals, that I think it would be really useful and helpful if Commission's focus would also, at this point, go more to the whole sort of output of the traffic, not only what kind of engine, but how to actually reduce the need for traffic and how to curb the increase of the total amount of traffic, because otherwise it seems that it will be really hard to achieve the climate goals within the traffic sector. So that would be just my wish for the Commission.
Excellent. Let's talk about renovation. I know in Estonia we have about 14,000 apartment houses that need to be renovated to reach the goals that we have set for us. Mr. Markkula, where do you see the role of municipalities in actually increasing the tempo of renovation, bringing the cost down? Because we know that right now, at least in Estonia, you have bigger construction companies who are not really that enthusiastic in renovating. But in order to bring the price down, one of the options would be to renovate cities block by block, not just individual houses. And for that, I guess the role of municipality is needed. So where do you see the potential in increasing the tempo in our renovation?
Yeah, the role of municipalities in general and cities especially, it is crucial, as you said, because it's not business-wise to do separately every house, totally separately. We should have larger areas that we apply that, and on that, so it's linking actually the latest new knowledge. So the planning should be done very carefully, and on that, so we should be able to use the experiences from other parts of Europe a lot. So public sector is the enabler of this transfer of knowledge very much. It's local, both schools, professional institutes, universities or University of Applied Sciences. So they play a crucial role because it's especially the younger generation who has an interest, because it's a huge market as well for their own coming jobs. And cities, as cities, we can have a few of the persons hired by the city to help on that, and we can use our own, in many cases, the public sector city has their own company operating on housing, and those been mainly focusing on building new houses. But the case again in Espoo that I know, especially last spring, we negotiated our plan for the next 3-4 years, so that focus our own Espoo housing company to change the focus more on this renovation and sharing then the practices with the rest, so that we can attract the private house apartment buildings to be renovated as well. So all of this, it's especially on this knowledge sharing, knowledge transformation, to make it more, let's say, profitable, and then integrate to that, so these different energy sources. What is the best way so it will be profitable on a longer term as well? Not just that what is the cheapest cost, but to take the maintenance perspective for the next. Then it should be not only 10-20 years, but hopefully at least 50 years. And that's a long planning that we need to do. And on that, so again, the cities are the major players.
Mr. Sinnemäki, where do you see the role of the municipality in this renovation wave? The planning is surely there, but how can we bring the cost down and increase the tempo that we have now?
Thank you. Super good question, and short answer that the role of the cities is huge, because actually we are permitting every project. In Helsinki, we own as a city a bit less than 10% of the whole built environment of all the buildings in the city, and there are a lot of rental housing, and of course then all the schools, kindergartens, hospitals, and sports facilities. For our own housing companies that we actually have a couple of, we have set the goal that in the renovation, a minimum 34% of increase of energy efficiency should be achieved when a major renovation will be done. And of course, that is a level that then acts also as a sort of inspiration, or setting the target for other players as well, that they can see that buildings both from the 70s or even from the 50s or from the 90s can be renovated, so that it's more than 1/3 of energy efficiency that is achieved. Then the second thing that I have already mentioned, since majority of the housing is privately owned, so there we have actually then, because we cannot regulate them hard. We cannot say if they are renovating that, okay, you must achieve this. Legislation does not allow that. And there we have chosen this way that I have mentioned, that we have really plenty of engineering people, capacity to guide and advise and try to inspire individual housing companies to do their best in order to increase the energy efficiency. Our goal has been that roughly 8,000 flats would be subject of some kind of energy renovation or efficiency increase every year. And it seems that now with this team of Energy Renaissance, we are achieving that goal. And certainly in our own city-owned housing, there we have been able also to use the European facilities, like Elena has been something that we have been using, and I don't know, perhaps one stream or one direction we could still go, that the major bigger housing owners would be more knowledgeable of the European possibilities. And last thing I want to mention is that I know that the Finnish governments have been always quite hesitant regarding the sort of mid-term energy renovation, when the building is not so old that it would need a whole total renovation, but say 20 years might be the age that you would do only an energy efficiency renovation. And just perhaps an encouragement for the Commission, or perhaps some direct dialogue, that in our analysis in Helsinki, we are thinking and seeing that this sort of mid-term energy renovation would be also economically beneficial for the owners of the houses. So there we as Helsinki disagree with the long-term view of the Finnish government, that we don't see it as a bad regulation to encourage to do that as well.
Mr. Kõlvart, when I speak to experts in Estonia, they say that we need to increase the renovation pace or the tempo by 3 times, basically. We need to renovate 3 times faster. Now, the obvious question is, how can Tallinn contribute to this? Because we, overall in Estonia, have about 14,000 apartment houses that need renovating. And if you take them one by one, it will be quite difficult to achieve the goal. So where do you see the strategy of the municipality, of the city, to increase the tempo? How can we do that?
70% of Tallinners live in apartment houses. So as I said, 5,000 apartment houses from 7,000 have to be renovated. So, and if we think that it's about 5 million, at least 5 million per one building, so you can imagine what is the foundation, what we need to have. So the honest answer, we don't have it. It's not possible. We have a state support system, but it's only 30% of a budget of renovation of one building. So what we can do, what we try to do now, so we create one pilot project of neighborhood modular renovation. So not one building, but 3-4 buildings, and in the same time city space. So public city space. So it's one of example of holistic project, of holistic solution. And that's why I'm talking about the holistic support system also from European Foundation. That it's very important to see the whole picture. And actually renovation in this way is more cheaper also. And in the future, the other apartment buildings, houses, they can use this example. But as I said, the biggest question is the foundation. So where to receive this foundation to renovate 5,000 apartment houses. So we have the plan how to renovate municipal buildings. This is not a big problem, but the biggest challenge is renovation of apartment houses, private apartment houses.
Mm-hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, we have about 3 minutes until the end of our debate. That is the official time. I think maybe you can forgive us if we exceed that time by about 2.5, 3 minutes. So because I promised to give the floor to you, so you can ask your questions the old school way, just raising your hand and grabbing a microphone from one of our kind assistants. We have about 4 minutes to do that. Would anyone like to put forward a question verbally, or have you exhausted your questions and ideas using Slido? If there is a question that I haven't asked in Slido, now you have the opportunity to ask that from the hall. If there is no appetite for that, I will hand over the floor to the commissioner, who can wrap up the renovation wave discussion that we had. A much briefer discussion than I would have wished for, but what can you do? Time has run out faster than I expected. Oh, we do have a question from there, a gentleman that we can later see on the stage as well, but go ahead. Please introduce yourself and who do you ask the question for?
My name is Aare Vabamägi. I'm working in the Tallinn City Property Department. And as a citizen living also in Tallinn, every day I see tens of ferries going to Helsinki. And before leaving, they are giving to our atmosphere a nice amount of dust, black dust. Does Tallinn or Helsinki have problem with that, and how to solve it?
Go ahead.
So, okay.
Let's start with the mayor then.
If you can say something about Tallinn, so we can
no,
discuss it together. Yes, okay.
So
this is actually a very important question, because one of the plan, and this is not only Tallinn or Helsinki city plan, it has to be the plan of harbors, of the ports. And I know that they have this plan because we discussed it before European capital year, and we discussed it this year also. The biggest aim is create the green corridor. Started from the Helsinki, or maybe started from the Tallinn, and harbor, green harbor. So it means that green electricity. So it means that all ships use only electricity during they staying on the harbor. So in the future, and this is a very big investment, the ships also have to use electricity. But this is the future. And the same situation in Helsinki. Green harbor, green ships, and green corridors. It means also public transportation possibility from the harbors. So, and Helsinki, they have a tram from the harbor. We started to build it now, and I see that this project is quite real. But the biggest investment, and maybe the biggest problem, is investment for the ships. Because I know that some companies just bought new ships and no electric ships. So the question is, what will be the reality? But European regulations create a situation when they don't have choice actually in the future.
Ms. Sinnemäki.
Yes, I think Mayor already explained most of it. At the moment, when I am here, actually there's a meeting in Helsinki that is handling the climate neutrality of the Helsinki port plan, and one of the biggest investments there is the land electricity that every ship that comes to the Finnish to the Helsinki port should plug themselves into the electricity grid and not to use the engine while being in the harbor. That has CO2 emission effect, but actually the bigger effect is what you mentioned, that these engines running while being in the port, in the city, they produce a lot of harmful substances like sulfur that citizens breathe. So it will be a huge air quality investment when especially all the ships that go back and forth to Tallinn, that they will go enter to the land electricity.
And Markku will wrap up in 10 seconds.
My solution on a bit longer term would be integrate the Rail Baltica to go all the way to Finland. Because it's time for the EU as well to invest here in the north.
I applaud to that. And an applause to our great panel, ladies and gentlemen. It is too bad that we don't have 1.5 hours more to get into the details of the renovation wave or urban mobility, which are both intriguing topics, but I guess to the audience, 3 hours of a panel might be a bit too much. So we will continue the debate bilaterally over coffee. We have a half-an-hour coffee break starting just now. Thank you so much for your active participation. Questions that I didn't manage to ask on Slido will now be discussed over coffee. Thank you once again for the panel.
Thank you.